Okay, the short answer to why orcas are ramming boats is that there's one idea that they're just doing it for fun, and in particular, what they're ramming is the rudders of boats, and this is around the Iberian Peninsula in Europe. And the other idea is that they are doing it as a sort of not as like a vengeance thing, but as a um, protective response. So that's the short answer to it. If you want to stick around for the long answer, or you can skip ahead to the long answer, it'll be in the timestamps below, or you can stick around for the rest of the show beforehand. We'll be talking about a rare Philippine animal that's been born in a zoo, so some good success there. In our nature solutions section of the show, we'll be talking about what animal is helping to prevent wildfires. It's not the bear. It's not Smokey the Bear. Well, he is. Smokey the Bear is helping to prevent wildfires. But there's another animal as well that's doing a great job. And then we'll also be talking in our research corner section of the show. We'll talk about how pear trees are helping to make oceans better places. This is Eco Show. Hello and welcome to Eco Show. I'm Henry, and this is a show about ecology, the environment, and things generally related to that sort of thing. We go through usually some news and some research and some interesting stories each week. So thanks for checking in. And we'll start this week with the news. Okay, so our main news headline this week is that a rare Philippine animal has been born in a zoo, and this rare animal is the Philippine spotted deer. It was born in the Chester Zoo in England, and the Philippine deer are a nocturnal deer. They're not too big. They're sort of like I think they're about a meter tall, so around 3 feet tall at their shoulder. So they're small deer, and there's only very few left in the wild now in the Philippines on 2 islands. And this is primarily due to hunting and deforestation. There were 32 that were successfully reintroduced into the wild in 2020. And we've got a little photo here so we can see they've got this cool spot sort of arrangement going on, and then these funky little antlers. I'm not sure if they get too much longer than that, but if you're just listening, they're just sort of maybe 6 inches to 30 centimeters long, and they got cool little faces. They look super cute. So these are endangered as recently as 20 years ago. There was thought to be over 1,000 left in the wild, but more recently it's thought that there's only a few hundred that are left. It's pretty hard for them to track them, so they'll go out and they'll set up camera traps, and we'll look for scat, so look for poop from these guys to try to get an idea of their species numbers. But them being nocturnal and fairly small in pretty deeply forested areas makes them hard to find. But good to have this one born at the Chester Zoo. I'm not sure if the Chester Zoo is particularly associated with doing rehabilitation, but that's sort of how zoos are justifying their existence, is by saying, hey, look, we're helping to regenerate species that are rare. So There's definitely some controversy about that, but it looks like this one was successful, so that's a good little success, and that's our main news headline for this week. Now, in our nature solutions section, we've got goats and wildfire. So I gave away the animal just then. The animal that's helping to prevent wildfires are goats. So you may or may have not seen this, but you would have seen that wildfires are a growing problem, particularly in dry Mediterranean areas and even further afield than that now. But goats can be a solution for this because we sort of know that goats will eat anything, and they've got these narrow and deep mouths that are particularly well suited to eat shrubs. So you may have seen these on the side of the highway or around the place, and they're being used pretty successfully to combat weeds and brush that can really increase the spread of fires. They've got strong tongue and lips and can eat poisonous things. They can also stand up on their hind legs up to 6 feet. So not only are they able to eat lots of things that are on the ground, they can also stand up and eat foliage that's hanging down from trees and things like that. And you can just imagine the positive impact in preventing wildfire that would have if you have less things dangling down to the ground, that you're going to have less wildfires going on. So they're eating all this sort of thing. They even eat dry brush, and they can graze in triple-digit heat or over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, over 33, 34 degrees Celsius. And they can go on steep mountainsides. So they're a really great resource to use for chopping down on all different sorts of grass and things that can cause fire. They're really handy for that. And especially because all that sorts of thing can take a toll on people using that. So the rate that they're saying is that 300 goats can clear about 5.6 hectares in 2 weeks. Let me check and see how many hectares are in how many football fields. So these 300 goats can clear 5.6 hectares in 2 weeks. And that's sort of a rough number, and that's a bit over 12 football fields. So it's a pretty large area where you can just plop your goats out there and set up gates and things like that to keep them held in. And the cost for that is $400 to $500 per acre for goats, whereas it can cost $1,200 to $1,500 to have people clear that same sort of amount of area. And then when you've got people doing it, there's risks for injury and things like that. So there are places like large flat areas, it's more efficient just to use a mower or something like that to knock down grass and things that can burn. But in lots of areas, it's not that easy. So you can just set out your goats and leave it to go. But there are a bit of costs associated with goats, with having to keep looking after them year round and everything like that. So they can be pricey, but yeah, just kind of a good. You don't have to burn as much waste. So if you're doing it with people, you'll have to gather all that brush waste and put it together. Whereas with goats, you can just have them eat it and go. So I don't know about about farming goats in terms of eating goat and things like that, but I mean, it sounds like it would be a pretty good sustainable system, especially if but I don't know if goats are, if they're working that much. Maybe you can't really eat them. I'm not too sure. But a cool, sustainable solution to wildfires there. So keep your eyes out for goats when you're driving around. And so that was our sustainable solutions section. And now we're onto Research Corner, where we're talking about how pear trees are helping oceans. And what they're doing is they are helping oceans by, or there's some research that's using pear trees and make them into artificial corals. So the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research is doing this research, and they were saying pear trees can be used to make artificial reefs. We've got a whole bunch of reef that's been damaged. So there's sort of two big threats to coral reefs. One is climate change in general, which is making some areas too hot for coral reefs or too acidic for corals to survive. And so that's one threat. And then the other threat is physical damage to coral reefs that can come from doing too much dredging, or so either dredging for materials from the ocean floor, or laying down long lines and then breaking up the sea floor when you're trying to catch fish and things like that. So there's been a lot of damage to reefs, and there's a lot of interest in how to make artificial reefs. The cool thing about this idea, which is something that I hadn't thought about too much before, is because when I first was starting to read it and they were saying, oh, we're going to use pear trees to use in these reefs to make artificial reefs, it sounds like a good idea, but it also sounds kind of weird. Like, why would you put trees out in the ocean? But they're pointing out in this research that it's pretty natural that trees would fall down, and usually for a long period of time you'd have pretty uninterrupted waterways. So lots of wood, especially after storms and things like that, would likely wash out to sea during different big storm events. So there is a bit of a justification to be putting wood in the ocean, and they were using these pear trees. It also has, this article had one of the best research titles I've read in a while. The title of this research was "Who Lives in a Pear Tree Under the Sea? A First Look at Tree Reefs as a Complex Natural Biodegradable Structure to Enhance Biodiversity in Marine Ecosystems." And that's by John Dixon et al. I looked it up, and John Dixon is a PhD student. So shout out to John Dixon for giving this research a fantastic title. Okay, so they want to see what the impact of these natural materials are in trying to regenerate and rebuild corals. And so they made 32 pyramid structures out of trees and put them 10 to 13 feet underwater, so 2 to sort of 3 meters underwater. And they checked on it after 4 months. They found 15 stationary marine organisms. I think 15 species of stationary marine organisms that were living on it. So there was some biodiversity success there. 4 months is pretty quick, but that's a pretty quick turnaround there. So it's exciting to see all these different developments that are going on for developing coral reefs and things like that. But it's always good to keep in mind that the biodiversity in pristine ecosystems is always much, much, much higher than in restored ecosystems. I do restored ecosystem stuff, and I love working on restored ecosystems, but you gotta acknowledge that the real moneymaker is in saving pristine ecosystems. There's just so much more complexity that's in that, and over time, surely restored ecosystems will catch up. But from all the research that's been done so far, it takes a really long time for restored ecosystems to catch up. So when you see developments that are coastal developments that are gonna knock down a wetland and say, oh, we're gonna dredge this wetland, but we'll create a new one somewhere else. The balance really has to. They should be doing such a huge amount of area. If that is going to be done, it's not equivalent to just do the same amount of area, especially something like wetland where the soil there is so carbon rich and it's just built up for hundreds and hundreds of years. So all important things to keep in mind here. Okay, keep it in mind. And keep it in mind. Okay. What was that? That was research. That was our research section. Okay, and a quick pause to shout out the show. The show, you may be listening to it as a podcast, or you may be watching it on YouTube. And wherever you're experiencing it, there's probably another place you can be experiencing it. So the easiest way to find all of the links to either the YouTube version of the show or the just audio version of the show is via the Instagram, and that's under Henry from Nature. We've also got a Facebook page and a TikTok as well. So, the show is all over the place. And if you would like to interact with it, I will 100% interact back with you. That's the benefit you can get of checking out the show in other places, and I think that's all I have to shout out. We'll have I'll have the name of the show below in the description for or the name of the Instagram and the channel, but I'm pretty sure it's Henry from Nature everywhere. So that's me. Where are you from? I think we're all from nature. I wanted to do that idea because I like things like that make me, I think it sounds maybe like facetious or something, or whatever the word is, but I just really like when things like that are sort of a reminder. Like when I see that, it's like, oh yeah, I'm from nature, we're all from nature. And it gets me into a very lovely headspace. Okay, we've shouted out the show, and now on to the main story. If you've jumped from the start, welcome to the main story about orcas ramming boats. You missed out on some great things, I'll tell you. But I'm glad you're here. And if you've been listening through, that's great too. Okay, so orcas are ramming boats. So just a little general overview of this. Orcas are ramming boats around Spain and the Iberian Peninsula. There's just one crew of orcas that are doing this, so this isn't a worldwide thing yet, but it could be, and we'll find out why in a minute. So we've got a researcher by the name of Renaud de Stefanis doing research with dummy rudders. And so there's ongoing research with this because orcas have been ramming the rudders of boats, but we don't really know why they're doing this. So there's some ideas, and it may be just playful, but it's not necessarily harmful. So definitely a lot of these, already orcas have got the name killer whale, and then it's like a lot of the news articles are saying the orcas are attacking boats. So a lot of that, you don't want to be too like, oh, you can't say that, but it kind of does have an impact when these news organizations are saying that, because we don't really know why they're doing this. These interactions are starting to spread and that's along the migration route. So this is sort of a behavior that's possibly being learned, and this has sunk several boats because when the orcas are hitting the rudders, it bursts a hole in the bottom of the boat and lets water in. But nobody's gotten hurt, and orcas still have never been documented to attack a person. So we don't know these motivation yet, but there are two ideas. So one of the ideas is that it is a trauma response, is what they're saying, and this is all from a BBC article titled "Why Orcas Are Suddenly Ramming Boats." And this trauma, this thought that it's a trauma-related thing, is the idea that they're doing this to stop the boat from moving. So they're not trying to hurt anybody, but they're just trying to stop the boat from moving. And this one orca that's been observed for a while by the name of White Gladys is the one that probably started it. And why they think it might be a trauma-related thing is because she's done this even when she's had her newborn daughter with her. And all these dolphin, I think orcas are related to dolphins. All of these stay really close with their newborn, so for them to go and do this out of the way sort of suggests that it may not necessarily be a play-related thing. And some of the other orcas that are involved with doing this, with hitting these rudders, have shown signs of damage from boats, and one witnessed another get tangled up in fishing line. So these orcas are pretty well researched and have been observed and have had cameras on them. So this is how we have so much information on these. And the other idea is that orcas have fads that they get into. And so this might just be a cultural fad, so that they have started to do. They're starting to just play with it, sort of like a little kid, just like knowing you can nudge something and then it breaks and you get a response. So those are the two sort of ideas. But we've got Renaud de Stephanis doing some research on this with dummy rudders, and we'll find out in time if this is something that is why they're really doing this. But it's pretty remarkable to me that there's no evidence that these have ever gone after humans, and you see what these orcas can do to sharks. They'll just like bite out the liver of a shark. Like, they're insane creatures, and why they would never go after humans, I don't know why that is. That's some other research that I'd be interested in. Maybe we're just not tasty enough, or I wonder if, because humans eat other mammals, but maybe orcas don't eat other mammals. No, they eat seals. Oh my gosh. Another wild thing is seeing how orcas eat seals. So it takes a whole lot of, especially to get up on ice. There's some great BBC Earth or Planet Earth videos of orcas all going and charging up on ice to tilt it to make a seal come into the water that they can then eat. So they definitely are eating. They're eating other mammals for sure. And another thing mentioned here is that doing this ramming into the boats or ramming into the rudders could just be, sort of play, learning thing, messing around. You're swimming through the ocean. If you're an orca, it's not going to be that. I would think seeing a big bright rudder, that'd be a pretty stimulating thing to, interesting thing to see. So, and then you start budging it around, and then the boat is moving and you're kind of controlling the boat. I feel like that's something that would be fun to do, but certainly there's no, it doesn't appear to be any malice in it. It looks likely that it's either just for fun or they're just trying to stop the boat from this sort of trauma response. But that's has yet to be seen so far. So there we go. We'll keep ourselves posted on that those orca developments, and that's it. So that's our show for today. Thanks for checking it out, and we'll catch you around the block. Have a great one. Bye.